A little girl knocks on the millionaire's door. What she says makes him turn pale. Mom just died. The doorbell rang once, then again faster, more urgently. Maxwell Grant frowned. He rarely received visitors, certainly not at his secluded estate, nestled among pine-covered Colorado hills, surrounded by wrought iron gates, motion detectors, and nearly a mile of private drive. He set his tumbler of whiskey on the sideboard. The clink of glass against wood unusually loud in the cavernous silence. It was nearly 8 p.m., and a thunderstorm had been raging for hours. Maxwell crossed the room slowly. He didn't rush for anything. Not deals, not crises, and certainly not doorbells. His home was staffed during the day, but everyone had left hours ago. Housekeeper, groundsman, chef. No one should be at his front door. Ever. As he approached, lightning flashed through the high-arched window, revealing the silhouette of someone small, very small. A child. He paused at the last step before the entrance, his instincts taut. He reached to disengage the security system and pulled up the exterior camera feed. A girl, alone, drenched. He unlocked the door but left the chain bolted, cracking it open just a few inches. A small figure stood trembling on the doorstep. She looked no older than 6 or 7. Her blonde hair clung to her face in wet tangles. She wore a backpack that drooped to one side and held a soggy, matted teddy bear tight to her chest. Maxwell stared. "Can I help you?" Her voice wavered, but was clear. "Are you Mr. Maxwell Grant?" He blinked, caught off guard. "Yes." She hesitated. "My name is Lily Monroe. My mum said if something ever happened to her, I should come find you." The storm rumbled above, but Maxwell barely noticed. "Something happened to her." Lily nodded, her eyes wide, glassy. "She died this morning. The lady from social services. She found your name on a paper my mum left. She said you're supposed to be my dad." Maxwell's blood turned cold. His hand slipped from the doorframe, and he gripped it again to steady himself. Who's your mother?" "Rachel Monroe." His mind blanked for a moment, then reeled Rachel. 7 years ago. Rachel had been a blinding comet in his life, beautiful, artistic, unpredictable. The kind of woman who challenged his certainty, who painted murals on the walls of his life and then vanished before he could ask her to stay. No goodbyes, no explanations. No closure. "I think there's a mistake," he said softly. Lily didn't look surprised. She reached into the soaked pocket of her coat and pulled out a wrinkled envelope, the corners dark with rain. "She told me you'd say that," she whispered. "She said to give you this." Maxwell took the envelope carefully. Written in a hand he hadn't seen in nearly a decade were the words, "Max, open only if something happens. Love, R." He felt the wind shift. Inside the envelope, a smaller piece of paper was folded in thirds, but his eyes couldn't leave the girl. Lily stood there, silent, shoes soaked, pink backpack slipping off one shoulder, and those eyes blue, piercing, familiar. His eyes. He stared at her face, finally letting himself see her. The slope of her nose, the determined little chin, the wary look beneath the fear. His breath caught in his chest. She was hers, but she was also his. The air seemed to collapse in around him. "Please," Lily said softly. "I don't have anywhere else to go." Maxwell hesitated only a second longer before disengaging the chain and opening the door fully. A rush of cold air and rain swept in. Lily didn't flinch. He stepped aside. "Come in." She walked over the threshold without looking back. He closed the door behind her. The door shut with a soft final thud, muting the storm outside. Inside, silence took over, thick, almost sacred. Lily stood just inside the grand foyer, dripping onto the marble tiles. Her backpack sagged heavily behind her, soaked through, and her sneakers squeaked softly as she shifted her weight. She stared around with wide eyes, taking in the high ceilings, the dramatic staircase. The walls hung with minimalist art that looked like it belonged in a museum. Maxwell watched her, unmoving. The folded envelope in his hand trembled slightly, its paper soft with moisture. He had no idea what to say. A child, in his home, calling him her father. A woman from his past one he had tried not to think about had died and sent this girl to him. The part of his brain trained for business wanted to demand answers, verify details, ask for identification, but another part, one deeper, older, was just staring at this tiny, soaked human with a teddy bear clutched to her chest, and feeling the slow churn of something he hadn't felt in years. Responsibility. No connection. Lily looked up at him. "Is it okay that I came here?" she asked quietly. "The lady said you were the only name on the paper. I didn't know where else to go." Maxwell cleared his throat. "You're here now. That's what matters. Should I take off my shoes?" He blinked. "What?" Lily gestured toward the puddle she was making on his pristine floor. "My shoes are muddy. I don't want to make your house messy." He stared at her a moment longer, then found himself nodding. "Yes, thank you." She bent down and untied her laces carefully, balancing on one foot and then the other, placing the shoes side by side. She set the teddy bear on the floor to do it and wiped her hands on her jacket afterward like she'd been taught manners mattered. Maxwell looked down at the bear. It was missing one eye, and the stuffing peeked out from its armpit seam. "Would you like a towel?" he asked. She nodded. He turned and walked to the hallway closet, heart thudding. Everything felt surreal. He grabbed a fresh towel and returned to find Lily still standing exactly where he left her, arms at her sides. He handed it to her wordlessly. "Thanks," she said. She wiped her face first, then her hair, and finally her hands. "Is there somewhere I can sit?" That question knocked something loose in him. Maxwell had hosted billionaires in his home, senators, celebrities, but no one had ever asked him, humbly and politely, if they could sit. He nodded and motioned toward the sleek, oversized couch in the adjoining sitting room. "Come on." She followed, glancing at the glass sculptures and wall-to-ceiling windows, like she was afraid of breaking something just by breathing. Maxwell sat opposite her, still gripping the envelope in his hand. "You said your mother passed away." "Today," Lily nodded. "This morning, at the hospital." "And you were with someone from Child Services?" "Yes, Miss Kendra. She was nice. But she said they didn't have space for me in the local shelter, and that this," she looked around, "was my best option. Because of the letter." Maxwell looked at the envelope again. He still hadn't opened it. He swallowed. "And you've never met me before?" "No, but my mom told me stories about a man named Max. She showed me a picture once." "What kind of stories?" Lily smiled, a little, faintly. "She said you were brilliant and difficult, that you loved your work more than anything, but that once you made her laugh so hard she spit orange juice on your shirt, and you didn't even care." Her voice caught. She said, "You didn't know about me, but that someday, maybe I'd find you anyway." The silence that followed felt heavier than the storm outside. Maxwell looked at the girl, then at the letter, and finally at the fireless hearth before them. The old life he'd spent years perfecting, work, efficiency, solitude, was unraveling before his eyes, and strangely, for the first time in a long time, he didn't want to stop it. Maxwell leaned back in the armchair, the envelope still clutched loosely in one hand. Rain tapped steadily against the tall windows behind him, filling the silence with a steady rhythm that felt almost like a countdown. He stared at Lily. She sat cross-legged on the edge of the long white couch, the towel draped around her shoulders, like a cape. Her small hands gently stroked the worn fur of her teddy bear, her gaze shifting occasionally to the unlit fireplace, then to him, then back to her lap. She didn't fidget or cry. She just waited. Maxwell had negotiated international contracts, brokered billion-dollar partnerships, and launched one of the most disruptive technologies of the decade. But he had never felt as unprepared as he did now. His voice was soft. When he finally spoke, Would you like something to eat?" Lily looked up, surprised. "Do you have mac and cheese?" Maxwell blinked. "Mac and cheese?" She nodded. "It was my mom's favorite. She said it was her comfort food. She used to make it when we had bad days." He rose to his feet slowly. "I'll see what the kitchen has paid." Walked into the gleaming chef's kitchen, flipping on lights as he went. Stainless steel appliances reflected his uncertain expression. His fridge was organized like a lab. Protein shakes, bottled water, meal-prepped chicken and kale. He opened the pantry. Cans, grains, imported pasta. Definitely no mac and cheese. But there, on the bottom shelf, he found a dusty box pushed behind a jar of almond butter, instant macaroni and cheese. One lonely box, probably left by the chef for emergencies. He held it up like he'd just discovered gold. 15 minutes later, he returned to the sitting room carrying a tray with 2 steaming bowls, a bottle of sparkling water, and a cloth napkin folded into a triangle. A force of habit. Lily's eyes lit up. "It smells just like Mum's." He placed the tray on the coffee table and handed her a bowl. "I can't promise it'll taste like hers." She took a bite and closed her eyes. "It's good, thank you." Maxwell sat back down with his own bowl. Though he wasn't hungry, he watched her eat in silence. It struck him how easily she existed in this space that had always felt too sterile for real life. She didn't comment on the expensive furniture or the wall-sized art. She simply ate her mac and cheese and hugged her bear. Then, she said something that made his breath catch. "Did you love her?" He looked up. "Your mother." Lily nodded. He exhaled slowly. "I did. Very much. But I wasn't ready to be the man she needed. I didn't know she was pregnant." "If I had," she interrupted gently, "she didn't blame you." Maxwell blinked. "She said that. She said you didn't know. And even if you had known, you might have been too busy to be a dad. But she also said someday, maybe you'd be different." That hurt more than he expected. "I've spent my whole life building things," he said. "But I've never built a family." "You have me now," Lily said simply. The room fell quiet again. Maxwell finally opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter, pages long, folded once. He didn't read it aloud, but as his eyes scanned the first few lines, his hands trembled. Rachel's voice leaped from the page, her curves in the letters, her honesty, her calm, gentle reasoning. She told him about her diagnosis, about the fear of leaving Lily alone, about the hope that one day, if the worst came, Maxwell would step up. And at the end, "If you ever loved me, love her. She's everything good I ever made." He folded the letter quietly and set it in his lap. "Where will I sleep?" Lily asked, almost apologetically. He looked at her, startled. I don't know. I can sleep on the couch if it's easier. I just didn't want to go to a stranger's house again. That's what the last place was like." The lady tried, but it smelled like cigarettes, and there was a baby that cried all night. Maxwell rose. "You won't sleep on the couch." He led her upstairs, past guest suites he'd never used, into one of the rooms that faced the garden. The room was sparse white bedding, neutral walls, nothing welcoming. He looked around, frowning. "It's not ready for a kid." Lily peeked in. "It's okay. I don't need toys or anything, just a blanket." Maxwell turned to her. "We'll get you your own room, with colors, and books, and stuffed animals. I don't know what you like yet." Lily smiled for the first time since arriving. "I like frogs, and purple, and outer space." He nodded, making mental notes like a man preparing for a high-stakes presentation. He found an extra pillow and blanket and helped her settle into the too-big bed. She looked small, her teddy bear nestled beside her. "Can I leave the light on?" she whispered. "Of course." Maxwell stood awkwardly at the door. "Good night, Lily." She looked up. "Can I call you something else?" He hesitated. "What do you mean?" She bit her lip. "Can I call you Dad?" Maxwell felt his throat tighten. "You can call me whatever makes you feel safe." She nodded once. "Okay, good night, Dad." He walked out and closed the door gently behind him. Maxwell felt something shift inside his chest, something large and unfamiliar and terrifyingly warm. Maxwell walked slowly down the hallway, his footsteps muffled by the plush carpet, the silence of the house more pronounced than ever before. But this time, it didn't feel empty. He passed the guest room, where the door now stood slightly ajar, casting a soft sliver of light across the floor. Lily was inside, probably not asleep yet, but lying there safe, warm, alive. He couldn't remember the last time someone other than staff had occupied this home. He couldn't remember the last time anyone had called him something as vulnerable as Dad. In the kitchen, Maxwell poured himself a second glass of scotch, but this time, he didn't drink it. He just held it, staring into the amber liquid, like it might provide answers. What now? The letter from Rachel sat on the counter, open and staring up at him. He picked it up again, rereading a few lines, feeling her voice wrap around him like a memory. "She's brave, Max, braver than I ever was. She asked you things plainly, and you'll want to deflect. Don't be honest with her, even when it's hard." He sank into a stool at the breakfast island, elbows resting on the cool granite, head in his hands. He wasn't ready for this, but she was here, and he couldn't let her down. The next morning, Lily emerged from the guest room wearing the same damp jeans and hoodie. Her hair was tangled from sleep, and her bear was tucked under one arm. Maxwell had already called his assistant, cancelling all meetings indefinitely, and rescheduling his Tokyo flight for a date he hadn't even bothered to choose yet. For the first time in over a decade, his calendar was open. "Good morning," he said, offering her a cautious smile. Lily nodded. "There was a squirrel on the balcony this morning. It stared at me for a long time. Maxwell blinked. A squirrel. She nodded solemnly. It made me feel less lonely. He cleared his throat. I'll have someone check the windows. But I'm glad it kept you company. She tilted her head. You don't cook breakfast, do you? No, he said honestly, but I've been known to make toast. With peanut butter, sometimes jam. Lily considered this. That's acceptable. Together, they managed toast and juice. Maxwell found himself pouring cereal into a bowl with deliberate care, like it was some high-stakes culinary mission. Lily ate quietly at the counter, legs swinging beneath the stool. What do you do for work? She asked suddenly. He looked up Michu. I run a company. Technology. What kind? Artificial intelligence, robotics, that sort of thing. She perked up. Like robots. Sometimes cool. Do you make ones that do dishes? Maxwell laughed, a sound that surprised them both. Not yet, but I'll put it on the list. After breakfast, Maxwell called his lawyer. He needed answers about guardianship, about custody, about what he could legally do next. The call was clinical, emotionless, but every decision felt oddly personal now. He also called his head of security. I need background checks. One on a Rachel Monroe deceased, but I want her records, health, work, anything. And another on a child named Lily Monroe. I want full confirmation on everything. Understood, came the crisp reply. And then, almost as an afterthought, also, get me a list of child psychologists in the area, the best. That afternoon, Maxwell took Lily shopping. Not online, not through a concierge. He took her himself, in person, for clothes and shoes and toys and everything a little girl might need at the department store. She pointed at a glittery, purple backpack shaped like a unicorn. Can I have this one? Mine's getting old. Maxwell didn't even check the price tag. Of course. She tried on sneakers and twirled in front of mirrors in a new lavender dress. A saleswoman smiled at them as they passed. She's your daughter? She asked warmly. Maxwell hesitated just a fraction of a second, then nodded. Yes, she is. That evening, as they sat on the couch watching a nature documentary about deep-sea creatures, Lily turned to him and said, Do you think my mum knew she was going to die? The question hit like a sucker punch. I think she knew it was possible. He answered truthfully. That's why she wrote the letter. That's why she told you to find me. Lily nodded, quiet. She didn't talk about it much. She was always tired, but she smiled a lot. I think she was trying to be happy for me. She was very brave, Maxwell said. She said the same thing about me, Lily whispered. He placed a hand on her shoulder. She was right. Later that night, as he tucked her into her freshly made bed, complete with new sheets covered in planets and stars, Lily pulled her teddy bear close and looked up at him. Are you going to be here tomorrow? Yes, Maxwell said without hesitation. And the day after? Yes, even if someone from your job gets mad, they'll have to wait. A small smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. Good, because I think I want to stay here, if that's okay. Maxwell nodded, a lump rising in his throat. It's more than okay. She turned onto her side, one hand curled under her cheek. Good night, Dad. Good night, Lily. He turned out the light and stood in the doorway for a moment longer, watching her breathe, listening to the quiet hum of her sleep. And somewhere deep inside his chest, something finally clicked into place. The next morning, Maxwell was already awake when Lily wandered into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She wore a new set of pajamas, soft cotton with tiny rockets and stars. Her old ones finally retired the night before. He had made pancakes, not gourmet ones, not gluten-free or oat milk or almond flour, just pancakes, slightly uneven, a little burnt around the edges. But his Lily blinked at the plate, like she wasn't sure it was real. Good morning, he said, setting a bottle of syrup on the table. She slid into a stool at the island. Are those for me? Unless you know another Lily who lives here. Her grin was quick and full. Cool. They ate in a peaceful silence, the kind that didn't demand conversation. Maxwell had always been uncomfortable with silence, filling every moment with meetings, calls, data, progress. But this felt different, comfortable, real. As she poured syrup over the second pancake, Lily said, There's a girl in my class who has a dad who's a dentist. Do you think your job is cooler than being a dentist? Maxwell smirked. Well, I don't fix teeth, but I do build things that might one day help dentists. So, kind of. She seemed satisfied with that. Later that day, Maxwell sat in his office reviewing an email thread from his board of directors. The quarterly numbers were below projections. Investors were growing nervous. One in particular, Robert Callahan, had sent a thinly veiled warning. If you're distracted by personal matters, perhaps we need to revisit leadership structure. Maxwell closed the email without replying. He stood and walked to the living room, where Lily sat at the coffee table drawing with markers. She looked up. "Can I show you something?" He nodded, kneeling beside her. On the paper, she had drawn a house with tall windows, mountains behind it, and a big pink heart in the center. Inside the house were two stick figures. One was her, clearly labeled Lily. The other had spiky hair and glasses, and was labeled Dad. He stared at it for a long moment. "That's us," she said. "I can see that. You're taller in real life." He laughed. "I'll try to fix that next time." She paused. "Do you like it?" "I love it. Can you put it on your desk, like in a frame?" Maxwell blinked. His desk, his fortress of productivity, had never housed anything more personal than an award or an encrypted flash drive. But this mattered more than any accolade. "Yes," he said. "I'll frame it today." That night, Maxwell received a call from a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Grant," came a woman's voice. "This is Evelyn Cortez with Child Protective Services. I'm following up on Lily Monroe's temporary placement with you." Maxwell stiffened. "She's with me. She's safe." "I'm glad to hear that. We received documentation left by her mother that names you as the intended guardian, but we'll still need to formalize custody proceedings and conduct a home review." "Fine," he said. "When tomorrow, if possible?" "Morning," he agreed. After hanging up, he stared at the wall, then looked around the house. It was beautiful, cold, modern, and completely unprepared for a child, so he called for help. Within the hour, Mrs. Elaine Sutcliffe, the estate's housekeeper and one of the only employees Maxwell actually trusted, arrived with boxes of supplies: sheets, curtains, snacks, books. She'd worked for his family before the business exploded back when the Grant name was barely worth a startup. "I figured you might need a few things," she said with a wink. "Thank you," he muttered. Already overwhelmed, she glanced down the hallway. "That little girl, she's something special." "I know. You're gonna be okay, Mr. Grant." Maxwell looked past her toward Lily's room. Light shone under the door. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I have to be." The next morning, Evelyn Cortez arrived precisely at 9 a.m. Her sharp bob and tablet case suggested efficiency, but her eyes were kind. Lily was already dressed in a navy dress with purple sneakers and a glitter hair clip. She insisted on pouring juice for their guest, carefully balancing the pitcher with both hands. "She's done well here," Evelyn noted after the first walkthrough. "Very well," Maxwell nodded. "We'll need a background check, references, a court hearing, and official paperwork." "Fine," he said. "Do what you need to do." Lily returned from the kitchen with a cookie on a napkin. "Would you like a snack?" she asked Evelyn. The woman smiled. "That would be lovely." Later, as they stood by the front door, Evelyn looked at Maxwell seriously. "You may not have planned for this, Mr. Grant, but Lily's thriving. That counts for more than people think." He didn't know how to respond, so he just said, "Thank you." That evening, Lily sat cross-legged on her bed, freshly showered and wrapped in her favorite blanket. Maxwell knelt to tuck her in, smoothing the quilt over her small frame. "Dad," she whispered. "Yeah, do you think Mom can see me?" He swallowed. "I do, even now. Yes, especially now." Lily's voice was quiet. "I hope she's proud of me." Maxwell hesitated, then reached out and brushed her hair gently behind her ear. "She is. So am I." Lily smiled as her eyes drifted shut. Maxwell stood there for a long time after she'd fallen asleep, watching the steady rhythm of her breath, his hands still tingling from where it had touched her hair. There was still so much he didn't know about parenting, about Lily's past, about how to do this right. But somehow, tonight, none of that mattered. The next morning, Maxwell woke to the sound of laughter. It wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable, light, warm, the kind of sound that didn't belong in a house built for silence and strategy. He sat up, disoriented, still in the clothes he'd worn the night before. His bedroom door was cracked open, and sunlight spilled across the floor. He followed the sound to the kitchen, where Lily was standing on a step stool beside Mrs. Sutcliffe, who was back earlier than expected. Pancake batter streaked Lily's cheek, and her sleeves were rolled up as she stirred with fierce concentration. "Morning," Sleepyhead, Mrs. Sutcliffe said, glancing at Maxwell with amused eyes. Your daughter decided we needed a better breakfast today. My daughter, Maxwell repeated under his breath. The phrase still didn't feel real, but it didn't feel wrong either. Lily looked over her shoulder, grinning. I'm making chocolate chip pancakes. Mrs. Sutcliffe said it's your favorite. Maxwell blinked. I didn't know I had a favorite. You do now, Lily said confidently. After breakfast, Maxwell took Lily to her first appointment with Dr. Marinfields, a child psychologist recommended by the CPS worker. Her office was warm and colorful, filled with stuffed animals, beanbags, and shelves of carefully chosen books. Maxwell waited in the lobby, flipping through a magazine he wasn't reading, while Lily met with the doctor behind closed doors. He had no idea what they were discussing: her mother's death, no doubt, or the sudden arrival at his doorstep, but the not knowing made him feel powerless. When Lily finally emerged, she looked calm, not happy, but not withdrawn. Processing things well, Dr. Fields told Maxwell later. There's trauma, of course, abandonment fears, sleep disturbances, but she's strong, very strong, and she trusts you. Maxwell blinked. She does. Dr. Fields nodded. That's rare, especially after such a loss. On the way home, Lily gazed out the window quietly for most of the drive. Then she said, Do you ever get scared? The question came so suddenly it caught him off guard. Scared of what? Of being a parent? Of messing up? Maxwell chuckled softly. Every minute, she looked over at him. Good, that means you'll be careful. He smiled despite himself. You're very wise for your age. My mum used to say that too. She said I was born with an old soul. Maxwell didn't reply. He just kept driving, the mountains rolling in the distance and the girl beside him, making this enormous, unfamiliar world feel strangely manageable. That afternoon, Maxwell took her to a nearby bookstore. He hadn't been inside one in years. Not a real one, anyway. His library was filled with first editions, business memoirs, and dense volumes on artificial intelligence. But this place had beanbags, handwritten staff picks, a reading nook with fairy lights. Lily wandered the children's section like she'd entered a cathedral. He let her pick 5 books. She chose 6. He didn't argue. At checkout, the clerk smiled. Daddy-daughter reading day. Maxwell hesitated again, then nodded. Yeah, something like that. By the end of the week, Lily had claimed the guest bedroom as her own. Maxwell had it repainted purple, per her request, and let her choose the new furniture from a catalogue. She picked a loft bed with a built-in desk and a moon-shaped lamp. Every night, she added a new drawing to the refrigerator, and every morning she asked Maxwell if he was still here. Each time, he said yes, and meant it. The only thing Maxwell hadn't yet dealt with was the letter. Not Rachel's letter to him, that he'd read a dozen times already, but the second letter, the one labeled with Lily's name in Rachel's handwriting. It was sealed, unopened, meant for some future moment. He kept it in the drawer of his nightstand, beside his watch and cufflinks. He didn't know when or if he was supposed to give it to her. Maybe not yet. Maybe on her birthday. Maybe when she asked. For now, he just kept it close. On Sunday, Lily came into the living room with a question that stopped him cold. Can we go to the cemetery? Maxwell looked up from his laptop. What? To see my mum? She's there, right? He sat forward. Yes, I mean if you want to. Of course, she nodded slowly. I think I should. I haven't said goodbye yet. Not really. An hour later, they stood side by side in front of a modest headstone in a quiet, tree-lined section of the cemetery. Maxwell had only been there once, and after the funeral had been arranged by the state. He hadn't even known the date until the lawyer called. Now, standing beside Lily, he felt the full weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. Lily crouched and placed a paper flower on the grass. I made it in therapy, she explained. It won't wilt. Maxwell stayed silent, hands in his coat pockets, unsure what to say. After a long pause, Lily whispered, I'm okay, Mom. I'm with Dad now. He's learning. Maxwell closed his eyes, the air sharp in his lungs. Then, Lily turned and wrapped her arms round his waist. I think she'd like you, she said. Maxwell rested a hand on her back, and for the first time in years, he felt tears rise, not from stress, not from exhaustion, but from something deeper, something honest. I hope so, he said quietly. I really hope so. The drive home from the cemetery was quiet. Lily rested her head against the window, watching pine trees blur past as the road curved through the hills. Her shoulders were relaxed, but Maxwell could tell the visit had taken something from her, or maybe it had given her something. He wasn't sure which. He glanced at her occasionally. She didn't speak, but she didn't seem sad, not in the same way she had been. When she first arrived, the grief hadn't left her, but it had shifted, evolved into something gentler. As they pulled into the driveway, she finally spoke. "Can we plant something?" Maxwell blinked. "What do you mean? Like a tree or a flower?" "Something near the house, so I can think of Mom when I see it." He nodded, heart tight. "Yes, absolutely. You can pick whatever you want." She smiled faintly. "Maybe a cherry blossom. Mom said they were her favorite, that they only bloom for a short time but come back every year, no matter what." Maxwell swallowed hard. "That sounds perfect." The next morning, Maxwell cancelled another week's worth of meetings. His board was growing restless, and Callahan had sent another terse message. "You've made your point. It's time to return to the business." But Maxwell didn't reply. Instead, he took Lily to a nursery outside the city. The clerk, an older woman with soil-stained gloves, helped them pick out a young cherry blossom sapling. Lily ran her hand over the soft leaves. "Is it okay that it's small?" "It's better that way," the woman said gently. "You'll watch it grow." They planted it together that afternoon in the front garden, just outside the window of Lily's bedroom. Maxwell handled the digging. Lily watered it with a tiny metal can and then pushed a handmade sign into the ground beside it, "For Mom, so she knows we're okay." Maxwell stood behind her, silent. Days passed, then weeks. Lily started attending a local elementary school. Maxwell drove her himself every morning, even if it meant pushing meetings or taking video calls from the parking lot. At drop-off, other parents waved politely, a few stared. He knew what they were thinking. What was he doing here? The Maxwell Grant. He'd been featured on business magazine covers, profiled in tech documentaries. His face had been a symbol of ruthless innovation. Now he carried a sparkly unicorn lunchbox and waited in the pickup line with the other parents. He didn't care. One afternoon, while waiting in the school parking lot, his phone buzzed. Rebecca, his longtime assistant and the only person who had seen his entire rise, was calling. "You've missed 4 board meetings." "Max," she said gently, "I know. They're voting on a proposal next week to remove you as CEO." He didn't react. "They think you're distracted." "I am distracted," he said, "by my daughter." There was a pause. Then Rebecca said, "I think it's the best distraction you've ever had." He smiled, surprised. "Thank you. But you'll need to make a decision soon. Either come back and fight, or walk away. I'll let you know." That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Maxwell poured a drink and sat alone in his office. The lights were dim. The drawing Lily had made of the two of them still sat in a silver frame on his desk, right beside a thick contract he hadn't touched. In days he picked up his phone and called his lawyer. "I want to talk about stepping down," he said. There was silence on the other end. "You're serious?" came Caroline's voice, low and sharp. "Completely. Max, you built that company from nothing, I know, but I wasn't a father then. I am now." The next day he met with the board. They were prepared for battle. Charts, projections, a formal vote. Maxwell surprised them all. "I'm stepping down," he announced. Murmurs filled the room. "I'll retain minority shares and move into an advisory role. But day to day, I'm done." Callahan looked smug. "Finally come to your senses." Maxwell smiled. "On the contrary, I've finally figured out what matters." That evening, Lily presented him with another drawing. This one showed 3 stick figures, Lily, Maxwell, and a woman with long brown hair. "That's Mom," she said softly. "I know she's not here, but I like pretending we're all together." Maxwell knelt beside her. "She is here," he said, "in your smile, in your laugh." Lily leaned her head against his shoulder. "I think she'd be proud of us." He wrapped an arm around her and whispered, "I know she would be." And for the first time since the night she knocked on his door, Maxwell didn't feel afraid of the future. He felt ready. The following Monday was Lily's school picture day. Maxwell had never prepared a child for such an event before. He had no idea what to pack, what to dress her in, or how seriously it was meant to be taken. Rachel would have known. Rachel would have chosen the perfect dress, brushed Lily's hair into soft curls, and reminded her to smile with her teeth. But Rachel wasn't here, and so Maxwell did his best. He helped Lily into a pale blue dress she'd picked out herself, carefully fastened the little silver heart necklace that had once belonged to Rachel. and tried and failed to braid her hair. "Let's leave it down," he said finally, brushing it back gently. "It's perfect the way it is." Lily inspected herself in the mirror. "I look like a blueberry." Maxwell smiled. "A very photogenic blueberry." She giggled and slung on her backpack. "You're getting better at this." At what being a dad, he didn't know what to say, so he just opened the door and held it for her as they walked to the car. Later that day, Maxwell stopped by the office, his former office. The reception area was modern, clinical, impersonal, everything he'd once wanted it to be. His replacement had already moved into the corner suite. His name had been removed from the directory. No fanfare, just silence. He wasn't bitter. He didn't want it back. But as he stood in front of the glass door with the etched company logo, he felt a strange sort of calm settle in his chest. This chapter was over, and that was okay. He dropped off a few remaining documents with the legal team, chatted briefly with Rebecca, and declined a lunch invitation from one of the board members. "Rain check?" they asked. "Permanent one," he replied. That evening, back at home, Lily was sprawled on the floor, surrounded by construction paper, glue sticks, and glitter. The dining table had become an art zone. Despite Maxwell's earlier protests, "We're making memory boxes in class," she explained. "Stuff to help us remember important things." She held up a small cardboard box, half covered in purple stickers. Inside, he saw a smooth pebble from their last walk, a photo of Rachel, a pressed cherry blossom petal, and a folded scrap of paper labeled "Dad's first pancakes burnt." Maxwell laughed. "You kept that, of course. That was a big day." He sat down beside her and handed her a printed photo from Picture Day. "You might want to add this." She took it carefully and studied it. "I don't look like a blueberry in this one." "You look like you." She grinned. "That's good." A few days later, Lily came home from school unusually quiet. Maxwell noticed it immediately. She dropped her backpack, didn't rush to the art table, didn't ask about dinner. He sat beside her on the couch. "Want to talk about it?" She shrugged. "Something happened." Lily stared at the floor. "There's a girl in my class named Maya. She said I'm not a real kid because I don't have a real mum, and my dad didn't know I existed." Maxwell's jaw clenched. "That's not true, and that's a cruel thing to say." Lily nodded. "I know, but it still hurt." He took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "Families come in all shapes. Some have two parents, some have one. Some are made by birth, others by choice. Ours was made by love. That makes it real. Do you think Mum would have liked my memory box? I think she'd have cried, and then hugged you so tight you couldn't breathe." That earned a tiny smile. Lily leaned into his side, quiet for a moment. "Can I ask you something weird?" "Of course. Do you ever think you and Mum would have ended up together if she had told you about me earlier?" Maxwell blinked. "I don't know. Maybe. But if that had happened, maybe we'd be different people now, and we might not have ended up right here." She thought about that, then nodded. "I like where we are." "Me too." That weekend, Maxwell hosted his first ever backyard barbecue. It was Lily's idea, inspired by a friend from school whose dad grilled hot dogs that didn't taste like charcoal. Maxwell had laughed, then panicked internally, then ordered a grill and called Mrs. Sutcliffe for help. Neighbors came, parents from school, Lily's classmates, even Jessica, the friendly mum from school pick-upper, arrived with her daughter, and a homemade salad. Maxwell manned the grill like it was a startup launch, focused, determined, slightly terrified. Lily flitted between guests like a tiny hostess, introducing people and offering lemonade with an apron she'd made out of an old pillowcase. Jessica approached Maxwell near the end of the evening. "You're doing great." "With what?" "Everything," she said simply. "You've built something beautiful here." Maxwell looked around, at the paper lanterns Lily had insisted on hanging, the messy backyard, the kids running barefoot through the grassland for the first time. In his adult life, he realized he had no idea what time it was, and he didn't care. That night, Lily fell asleep in Maxwell's bed, too tired to move after hours of running, laughing, and sneaking cookies. He lay beside her for a while, listening to the steady sound of her breathing. Then he reached into the nightstand and pulled out the sealed letter, Rachel's letter to Lily. He ran his fingers over the familiar handwriting. Soon, maybe soon, but not tonight. Tonight, they were exactly where they needed to be. The following morning, Lily woke up with her legs tangled in the covers and her teddy bear pressed against Maxwell's arm. She stretched like a cat, yawned, and said, "We should get a dog." Maxwell blinked at the ceiling, still groggy. What a dog, you know, for protection and cuddles. He turned his head toward her. That's a big commitment. So am I, she said, grinning. He laughed touche. By the end of the week, they visited the local animal shelter. Maxwell had never owned a pet before. His lifestyle had never allowed for its constant travel. 16-hour workdays, meetings in time zones he barely kept track of. A dog would have been impossible. But now, with Lily at his side and a leash in hand, he found himself kneeling in front of kennel after kennel, looking into eyes that seemed to understand things he dared in single quotes. Lily stopped in front of one small brown dog with floppy ears and a tail that wagged cautiously. What about this one? She asked. Maxwell read the tag. Charlie, 2 years old, shy but sweet. He looks nervous, he said. So did I, she replied. That was that. They brought Charlie home that afternoon. He trembled for the first hour, then promptly curled up on Lily's blanket and fell asleep like he'd lived there his whole life. Lily insisted on writing a list of house rules for Charlie, complete with hand-drawn icons. No chewing furniture, barking at butterflies, must sleep with Lily at least twice a week, must accept belly rubs at all times, must never leave. Maxwell added a 6th rule in careful penmanship. Charlie is part of this family now. The days turned into weeks, and life settled into a rhythm. Lily woke up early for school. Maxwell made breakfast. Charlie followed them both from room to room like a loyal shadow. Afternoons were filled with homework, walks, and laughter. Nights ended with bedtime stories, whispered secrets, and the quiet kind of love that didn't need to be spoken out loud. Maxwell still hadn't given Lily the letter. Some nights he'd hold it in his hand, wondering if today was the day. But she seemed happy, whole, and he was afraid of cracking that delicate piece. Then, one crisp autumn evening, Lily asked, "Did my mum write anything for me?" They were sitting on the porch swing, Charlie curled at their feet, the scent of fallen leaves in the air. Maxwell looked at her. Yes, she did. Lily nodded like she already knew. "Can I read it?" He didn't speak, just rose, went inside, and returned with the envelope. She took it gently, her fingers tracing the name written in her mother's familiar script. "Lily, I'll be right here," he said, sitting beside her again. She opened it slowly, unfolding the letter with careful hands. The porch was silent, except for the creak of the swing and the whisper of paper. Maxwell didn't read over her shoulder, didn't ask what it said. He just waited, watching the breeze catch strands of her hair. A few minutes passed. When she finally looked up, her eyes were wet but steady. "She said she's proud of me," Lily whispered. "That she always knew I'd be brave. That she loved me more than anything." Maxwell nodded, his own throat tight. "She said she loved you, too," Lily added softly. "Even if you didn't know it, she said she believed you'd take care of me the way she would have." "I will," he said, voice rough. "I promise." "I know," she said, resting her head against his arm. They sat like that for a long time, the sun dipping low, painting the world in amber and gold. That weekend, they visited the cherry blossom tree for the first time in weeks. It had grown just a little enough to show promise. Lily brought a small paper lantern and hung it from one of the branches. It fluttered in the breeze, dancing like a heartbeat. "She would have liked this tree," Lily said. Maxwell looked at her, then at the lantern. "She would have loved it." That night, Lily asked, "Do you think we'll always be a family?" Maxwell turned off the light and tucked the blanket around her shoulders. "We already are. Even when I'm old and move away. Especially then," she smiled. "Good, because I think I hit the jackpot." He brushed a hand across her hair. "So did I." Autumn melted into winter. Lily's world began to change again, this time in small, gentle ways. Snow fell softly on the garden where the cherry blossom tree stood, its branches bare but not forgotten. Inside, the once silent house had become warm, full of life. Smells of hot cocoa, wood from the fireplace, and whatever Maxwell was attempting to cook filled the air most evenings. Charlie had grown braver too, now barking proudly at mailmen and squirrels alike. He slept at the foot of Lily's bed and followed her like a shadow, his tail wagging at the sound of her voice. Maxwell learned how to braid hair badly at first, then well enough to earn a proud nod from Lily. They built snowmen, burned cookies, argued about homework, and turned the spare room into a space lab full of glow-in-the-dark stars. And slowly, Maxwell began to notice something he had never felt in all his years building companies. chasing deadlines, or speaking in boardrooms. Peace. It didn't roar, it didn't demand, it simply settled in, wrapping itself around his daily life like an old friend returning home. One evening in December, Maxwell took Lily to a holiday market in the city. Lights twinkled along every stall, carolers sang on corners, and vendors handed out warm cider in paper cups. Lily wore a fuzzy red hat, and a scarf so long it nearly touched the ground. They stopped at a booth selling handmade ornaments, and she picked up one shaped like a house with glittering windows. "This one," she said, "it looks like us." Maxwell raised an eyebrow. "We look like a house," she giggled. "No, I mean it looks like our home, cozy, with light inside." He bought it without hesitation and later hung it on the small tree in their living room. Right at the top that night, Maxwell tucked her in with a book about constellations. Lily pointed at a diagram of Orion and whispered, "If Mum were a star, do you think she'd be the biggest one?" "She'd be the brightest," he said. Lily nodded. "I think she watches us from there." Maxwell pulled the blanket up to her chin. "I think she's proud. I hope so." He paused. "You know, I used to think I had to do something huge to be important, build something the world couldn't ignore. And now," he smiled, "now I think raising you is the most important, the thing I'll ever do." She gave him a sleepy smile, one that Rachel had worn 100 times. "I'm glad you opened the door that night," she murmured. "Me too." On Christmas morning, Lily woke up early and raced down the stairs in her mismatched pajamas, Charlie barking behind her. The living room was filled with wrapped gifts, not extravagant ones, but thoughtful. Books, art supplies, puzzles, a telescope. On top of the smallest box sat an envelope. Lily opened it carefully. Inside was an adoption certificate, but official. Her name, in full, Lily Monroe Grant. She blinked, then looked up at Maxwell, who was standing near the fireplace in a sweater she had picked out herself. "Is this real?" He nodded. "It's just the beginning. But yes, I want you to be my daughter, not just in my heart, but on paper, too. If that's what you want." Tears filled her eyes. More than anything, she ran into his arms, and he lifted her off the floor as Charlie barked joyfully in circles around them. Later that evening, after dinner and hot chocolate, Lily placed a final ornament on the tree, one she had made herself. It was a simple paper heart, covered in purple glitter and carefully written words. "Family is who stays, even when it's hard." Maxwell stood behind her, reading it. Then he picked her up and placed her on his shoulders, letting her adjust. The angel on the top of the tree. The living room glowed. So did they. The new year arrived quietly. No fireworks, no parties, just a warm fire, a bowl of popcorn, and Lily curled up beside Maxwell beneath a blanket they now referred to as the cuddle fort. Outside, snow blanketed the trees. Inside, the only sound was the occasional pop from the fireplace and the rhythmic breathing of Charlie, snoring softly at their feet. Maxwell had never spent New Year's Eve like this before. He used to toast champagne on balconies overlooking foreign cities, business deals closed in Tokyo, gala events in Paris, private jets, five-star hotels, and meaningless midnight countdowns with strangers in tuxedos. But now, here in this house, with one small girl leaning against his side and a sleepy dog warming his feet, Maxwell felt something he never had before on New Year's Eve. Content. The next day, Lily handed him a wrinkled sheet of paper. "My resolutions," she said proudly. Maxwell adjusted his glasses and read them aloud. "Learn how to bake a real cake, not the boxed kind. Get better at spelling necessary. Teach Charlie not to eat. Crayons make Dad laugh every day. Be brave, like Mom." Maxwell smiled. "I think those are the best resolutions I've ever seen." "What are yours?" she asked. He thought for a moment, then said, "Listen more, work less, be the dad you deserve." Lily beamed. "You're already doing pretty good at that." A week later, a package arrived in the mail addressed to Lily Monroe Grant. Inside was a photo album, a surprise gift from Rachel's old friend Kelsey, who had found it while going through storage. Lily sat on the living room rug, slowly turning the pages. Each photo captured a different piece of Rachel's life, holding Lily as a baby, painting on a rooftop, laughing in a cafe. Maxwell sat beside her, mesmerized. "She was so young," he murmured. "She was so happy," Lily replied. They reached the last page. It was a photo Maxwell had never seen: Rachel, holding a baby Lily in one arm and a crumpled letter in the other, tears in her eyes and a soft smile on her face. The background was a bus station. She took this the day we left the city. Lily whispered, before she stopped trying to find you. Maxwell stared at the photo. She never gave up. She just wanted to protect you. Lily nodded. I know. That night, Lily placed the album on her bookshelf beside her memory box. Are you sad? Maxwell asked as she crawled into bed. A little, she admitted, but mostly I feel lucky. Why? Because I had her. And now I have you. Maxwell kissed her forehead gently. We're both lucky. Even Charlie. Especially Charlie. Lily giggled and pulled the blanket over her chin. Do you think we'll still live here when I'm a teenager? He raised an eyebrow, planning ahead already. I just want to know if we'll still have movie nights and pancakes and the cherry blossom tree. He leaned back in the chair beside her bed. If I have anything to say about it, yes, all of that and more. She nodded, satisfied. Good, because I don't ever want to go back to a life without all this. The next morning, Lily left a drawing on his desk. It was a comic strip, hand-drawn in marker, titled, How to Become a Dad When You Least Expect It. Frame 1. A tall man with spiky hair and a frown opens the door. Frame 2. A small girl with a teddy bear says, Hi, Mom just died. Frame 3. The man turns pale. Frame 4. He makes her mac and cheese. Frame 5. He learns to braid hair. Frame 6. He says I love you with pancakes. Frame 7. He plants a tree. Frame 8. They both smile under a starry sky. Maxwell read it 3 times before, slipping it into a frame. It became the first thing he looked at every morning and the last thing every night. Spring came slowly. It began with the faintest hint of green on the cherry blossom tree, like a whisper from the earth that life was returning. Lily checked it every day after school, reporting on new buds like she was guarding treasure. 3 new ones today. She shouted one afternoon, running into the kitchen, cheeks pink from the wind. I think they'll bloom soon. Maxwell smiled, setting down his coffee. Your mum would love that. Lily nodded. She always said, new beginnings come with spring. At school, Lily had been given an assignment, Family Heritage Week. Each student was to create a presentation about their family, where they came from, who they were, and what made them unique. Lily worked on it for hours. She included pictures of Rachel, Maxwell, and even Charlie. She drew a family tree, then taped a pressed cherry blossom to the top corner. When it was her turn to present, Maxwell came early and sat in the back of the classroom, heart pounding. Lily stood at the front with her poster board, her voice steady but soft. My name is Lily Monroe Grant, she began. My mom's name was Rachel. She was brave and funny, and taught me how to draw stars and be kind. She glanced toward Maxwell. He gave a small nod. My dad's name is Maxwell. I didn't meet him until this year, but he makes the best pancakes, tells me the truth even when it's hard, and never lets me feel alone. She paused, then added, families aren't always what you expect. Mine wasn't, but it's exactly what I needed. There was a quiet moment in the classroom, just long enough for Maxwell's heart to break and rebuild itself all at once. Then the kids clapped, loudly, and Lily smiled as if the whole world finally saw her. On the walk home, Maxwell asked gently, did I make the cut? Lily grinned. You're the headliner. Later that evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Lily turned to him. Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if I hadn't shown up? Maxwell considered that for a moment. Yes, he said, all the time. And he looked at her. It would have been quieter, simpler, more controlled, better. He shook his head. Not even close. Lily leaned back in her chair, satisfied. Good, because I'm not going anywhere. When the cherry blossoms finally bloomed, it was a Sunday. The tree stood proud and pink, covered in soft petals that swayed in the breeze like tiny dancers. Lily stood beside it, holding a photo of Rachel in one hand and Charlie's leash in the other. Maxwell had brought a picnic blanket, and they sat under the tree, watching petals fall like snow. I think this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, Lily said. Maxwell didn't answer. He was watching her. That night, as they packed away dishes and folded blankets, Lily asked, can we do something special on this day every year? Like what? Like celebrate where it all started. Maxwell tilted his head. You mean when you knocked on my door? Lily nodded. It was scary and sad, but it also changed everything. That should count for something. He thought about it. It does count. And from now on, we'll call it Found Day. Found Day, she repeated softly. I like that. Found Day became their tradition. Each year on that spring afternoon, they would picnic under the cherry blossom tree with peanut butter sandwiches, strawberry lemonade, and a candle lit in Rachel's memory. Lily decorated the tree with tiny hand-painted tags, one for every year she had known her mum, and one for every new year she had with Maxwell. They didn't make a big deal of it publicly. No announcements, no balloons, just them and Charlie, and a quiet kind of joy that grew deeper over time. Lily was 10 when she asked to learn how to ride a bike. Maxwell hadn't ridden in decades, but that afternoon, they walked to the park, Lily with a new purple bicycle, Maxwell with a helmet he couldn't quite figure out how to strap on. She fell 3 times in the first hour. Maxwell wanted to panic each time, but she popped back up, knees scraped and grinning. Rachel would have said something poetic, he thought, something like, "Every fall is a step closer to flying." But Maxwell just handed her a water bottle and said, "Try again." And she did. By the end of the day, she was wobbling through the gravel path, shouting, "Don't let go." "I already did," he called back. Her laugh echoed through the park like a spark of sunlight. On Lily's 11th birthday, she asked to visit the city where Rachel had grown up. Maxwell arranged everything quietly, carefully. He booked a hotel near the park Rachel had painted murals in and took Lily to a tiny diner Rachel once loved. They found the mural still standing, faded, chipped in places, but undeniably hers. Lily ran her hand over the painted stars and whispered, "It's like a piece of her is still here." Maxwell nodded. "That's how art works. It stays, even when we can't." They spent the weekend walking Rachel's old haunts, collecting stories like souvenirs. Maxwell shared what he remembered: how Rachel always carried 2 notebooks, how she hummed while she painted, how she hated elevators but loved climbing stairs. Lily wrote it all down in a journal titled, "Things Mom Gave Me." That summer, Lily got into a fight at school. Maxwell was called into the principal's office, where Lily sat, red-faced and quiet. A boy had made a cruel joke about orphans, and said she was only adopted because Maxwell felt sorry for her. Maxwell waited until they got home before saying anything. He found her sitting on the porch, arms folded, chin trembling. "I didn't hit him," she said, "but I wanted to." Maxwell sat beside her. "Want to talk about it?" She shook her head. "I don't feel sorry for you," he said after a while. "I feel lucky." She blinked. "You saved me," he said. "Not the other way around." Her lip wobbled. Then she leaned against him, and he wrapped his arms around her like armor. By the time Lily turned 12, her room had changed 3 times. Purple walls turned teal, frog posters replaced by space maps, and the art corner expanded into a full-blown creative studio. Maxwell cleared out his old office to give her more space. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I don't need it anymore," he replied. "You do." She painted a mural on one wall, a tree with blossoms that looked suspiciously like the one in their yard. At the base of it, 2 figures stood hand in hand, a small girl and a tall man, both looking up at the stars. One night, Maxwell found a letter taped to his bedroom door. Inside was a drawing of a heart with the words, "Thanks for choosing me, even when you didn't have to. Love, Lily." He sat on the edge of his bed for a long time, the letter in his lap, the world outside quiet. He thought back to the moment that had started it all, a knock at the door. A girl with tangled hair and tear eyes saying, "Mom just died." It felt like a lifetime ago. In many ways, it was. The day Lily graduated 8th grade, Maxwell cried. Not openly, not with sobs, but with quiet tears he wiped away quickly, pretending to adjust his glasses. Lily stood on the school auditorium stage, her hair pulled back in a braid, wearing a navy dress and the same silver heart necklace Rachel had once worn. She smiled with a confidence that belonged entirely to her. When her name was called, Lily Monroe Grant Maxwell stood and clapped, louder than anyone else. After the ceremony, she found him outside near the cherry trees that lined the school courtyard. "You okay?" she asked, holding her diploma with one hand and Charlie's leash with the other. He nodded. "You made it." "I'm just getting started." He smiled. "I know." That night, they celebrated at home with burgers and milkshakes and a cherry pie Lily insisted on baking herself. Maxwell took pictures of everything: of Lily holding her diploma, of Charlie stealing pie crust, of the glitter sign taped above the kitchen. "We did it." Later, as they sat under the stars in the backyard, Lily looked over at him. "Do you think Mom would be proud?" Maxwell didn't answer right away. He was staring at the sky, then at her, the life she'd become, the person she'd built herself into. She'd be in awe, he said finally. Lily smiled softly. I think so too. The cherry blossom tree had grown tall by then. Strong. Each year it bloomed fuller, more confident, the roots spreading deeper into the ground beneath the house that had once felt cold, now pulsing with life and memory. Maxwell built a bench beneath it, a quiet place to sit, to think, to remember. Lily painted Rachel's name on one of the stones at its base. Rachel Monroe, forever our beginning. When Lily turned 16, she got her learner's permit. Maxwell let her drive the long, winding road to the lake where they'd taken their first weekend trip together. She played old music on the radio. Rachel's music hand rolled down the windows, her laughter caught by the wind. She was growing up. Not too fast, but fast enough, and Maxwell felt the shift, not in a sad way, but like standing on a shoreline watching the tide recede gently, knowing it would return. One night that summer, Lily sat beside him on the porch and said, "When I was little, I used to be scared you'd change your mind." Maxwell looked at her. About what? About keeping me. He reached over, took her hand. "There was never a moment, not one, when I wasn't absolutely sure I wanted you in my life. I know that now," she said. "But back then, it felt too good to believe." Maxwell gave her hand a squeeze. "You believed anyway. That's what made all the difference." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Lily rested her head on his shoulder. "You're not just my dad," she whispered. "You're the reason I became who I am." Maxwell felt the words settle inside him like a vow fulfilled. "You knocked on my door," he said, "but you opened my heart." They sat in silence then, no more questions, no more fears. Just the wind in the blossoms and the steady beat of a life remade from love. Years passed quietly, beautifully. Lily grew. She outgrew stuffed animals and training wheels, outgrew the tiny desk in her bedroom and the drawings she once taped to the fridge. But she never outgrew the way she'd press her cheek to Maxwell's shoulder when she was tired, or how she looked back at him every time she walked away, just to make sure he was still there. He always was. On her 18th birthday, Lily stood beneath the cherry blossom tree, now towering, proud, a living monument to everything they had built together. Maxwell brought out a small wooden box. Inside was the original letter Rachel had written him, the one that started it all. Lily touched the paper reverently. "Do you still remember the night I came?" "I remember everything," he said. "How small your voice was, how big your courage was." She smiled. "I was so scared." "So was I. But we made it," she whispered. Maxwell looked up at the blossoms dancing in the wind. "We did more than that." That fall, Lily left for college in a nearby city, art and psychology, with a minor in education. She wanted to work with kids who had lost parents. She wanted to help them find what she had found: love, safety, a second chance. Maxwell helped her move into her dorm. He carried boxes up 3 flights of stairs and assembled a bookshelf without instructions. Before he left, she hugged him tight. "You changed everything for me," she said. "You saved my life." Maxwell held her back, hard. "You gave me mine." He returned to the house alone that night. Charlie was older, now grayer, slower, but he still followed Maxwell from room to room, as if waiting for the girl to come home. The house felt quiet again, but not empty. Maxwell walked out to the cherry blossom tree and sat on the bench they'd built together. He placed a hand on one of the stones at its base, the one with Rachel's name. "Thank you," he whispered, "for trusting me, for bringing her to me." The wind stirred the petals overhead, and in that moment, Maxwell didn't feel alone. Years later, a new knock at the same front door. This time, a young woman in her 20s, with Rachel's eyes and Maxwell's steadiness, stands on the porch, her suitcase at her side, a toddler on her hip, a paint-splattered backpack slung over her shoulder. The door opens. Maxwell, older, now slower but still sharp, smiles the moment he sees her. "Hi, Dad." He opens his arms. "Welcome home, Lily."